we really need to let you know that all of us are so appreciative of the folks on the front lines, and we know that it's getting harder and harder. So we just want to surround you with good thoughts and let you know that you should hang in there and we'll get through this together. We have two really dense pieces of our presentation today, so we encourage folks to use the chat, and if we have time, we'll answer some of your questions if we have time. But we want to go through the waiver and then also talk about working with folks with mental health issues. So welcome, thanks for joining us, and we will go to the announcement slide. The agenda is as it's always been, but we'll be go through as quickly as we can the announcements, DOH and CCEH and HUD updates, so that we can get to the COC update, which is the waiver, and then on the ground strategies, dealing and giving some tips for dealing with folks with serious mental health issues. Then, as always, we have our takeaway slides, our next steps, and a reminder of our next meeting. So the announcements, just a reminder that everything we've done and presented are available at this link. Reminder, we send the slides out after this call, so you will have them available to you, and you can click directly on the link to get our most recent responses. Please, please, please let us know if there's anything we can do for you. If you have any questions, we'll give you as much information as we have. Alana from HUD is on the line, so I just want everyone to know that you've got a lot of support, and we will get your answers as quickly as we know what they are. So without further ado, is anyone from HUD on the line?
I'm on the line, Alana.
Okay, I'm sorry, I meant to say DOH, but why don't we, since I have already said HUD and you've spoken, what do you got
I think
for us?
Bo is on the line. I thought I saw Bo Anderson.
Hey.
All right, guys, you have to stop talking.
All right, let's go with Alana from HUD. And then if Bo's prepared to speak on behalf of DOH, we'll have him speak next. Doesn't look like he came prepared to be the representative, so we'll, oh, Kara jumped on too, so.
Yeah, sorry, my kids are just being loud, so I had to be muted, but I can talk.
All right, then let's go and order the slides. DOH, Alana, please be patient. Okay, Kara, what do you got?
Hi, everyone. We are really busy this week trying to work with CCH and the state DAS, Department of Administrative Services, to get all the hotels under contract so we can move as many people from shelters as we can into hotel rooms. So that's been the main focus of this week. We're hoping people are going to start moving in today. And pretty much my 30 seconds.
All right, great. If you have any questions for Kara, again, use the chat room and we'll try to get those answered either during our time today or shortly thereafter. All right, so we'll move quickly to CCEH. Is David Gonzalez-Rice on the call?
Yeah, hi, I'm here with Theo.
Oh, hey, buddy.
Theo was just telling me he's making delicious donuts with his granny and grampy downstairs. So that's
Grampy not working now.
okay, good. I've got 20 seconds left. All right, you with me? Good. So we're supporting DOH in reaching out to Department of Public Health and the FQHCs to come up with a plan around effective isolation and quarantine protocols in all the counties across the states. So just want to let you all know we're working hard on it. We know that those have effectively been established in some cans. And we're going to do our best to gather what's already out there, talk to the FQHCs and the local health departments across the state, and hopefully have some, can you hear me over Theo? Hopefully have some sort of standardized guidance to support the cans in working with their health departments statewide by next week.
That was short and sweet. Thank you. Again, any questions for David, use the chat box. You can also chat directly to people privately. So if you want to know what kind of donuts that Theo is making, you can do that directly to David and not to everyone. Okay, so now, Alana, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. How are you all today? I'm sure getting weary. This week we're at the end of another week in our new normal, and again, on behalf of all of my HUD colleagues, we really truly appreciate all the work all of you are doing on the front line, and I hope that some of the work that we're doing will help you. As most of you know, we issued a mega waiver, and the date of that mega waiver is March 31st, 2020. That's important because some of the relief that's contained in the mega waiver is identified for a certain number of months from the date of the memorandum. So it's very tiny on John Gibbs' signature, but it is March 31st. So the mega waiver, which is, you know, almost in a way separate and distinct from the CARES Act funding, that's why I want to spend a little bit more time on that first. It allows you to do actions that waive certain regulations. And in order for you to do that, you don't need to request permission from the field office, but you do need to notify us that you intend to carry out a waiver activity, and you need to inform the field office of what you're doing by emailing me at the shared mailbox that I sent out yesterday, and I gave the full address for it this morning. Hopefully everyone got that. You need to send that at least 2 days before. You're not going to get an answer from HUD. You're just notifying us that you're doing that. That's the most important thing, and you're going to start it, you know, at least 48 hours after you notify us. It's also important for you to note that at some point, obviously not the most critical thing right now, what's more critical right now is getting the work done, but at some point you'll need to adjust or amend your policies and procedures so that they reflect what you're doing vis-a-vis the mega waiver. So for the continuum of care, there were a number of waivers given. If you look at the waiver itself and you go to the last page, which is page 13, attachment number 1 to memorandum, it really gives you the protocol for what you need to send in when you're notifying us that you intend to take advantage of the waiver. What I am trying to get clarity on from headquarters is, I know it says grantee, so can you do it just by grantee? Like, for example, I'm thinking more of the state of DEMIS and DOH. Can we just say Department of Housing, or do they need to tell us which grants they're using it for? You know, for some of our recipients, it's only 1 or 2 grants, so it's not an issue. But obviously for DOH or DEMIS or our larger grantees, it could mean a number of grants. So I'm going to try and get some clarity on that today. It says grantees must mail or email. I'm telling everyone email, obviously. At this time, we're not mailing. And all you need to do is put in the requester's name, title, contact information, the area where the waiver will be used, the date on which you expect to take advantage of the waiver flexibility, and a list of the flexibilities. So there are 17 of them. 15 of the 17 apply to either continuum of care, emergency solutions grants, or housing opportunities for persons with AIDS programs. So the continuum of care, if you want, I can go through those, John, if you'd like me to go through those with everyone. The first one is the fair market rent for individual units and leasing costs. It's allowing you to waive any lease executed by a recipient or subrecipient to provide transitional or permanent supportive housing during this. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip a page? No. Let me dial back for a minute. Fair market rent for individual units and leasing costs. The requirement is that the rents not exceed the FMRs. What we're doing is waiving that regulation to allow recipients to use our funds to pay for leasing costs above the FMRs when leasing individual units, even if the rent is reasonable when compared to other similar unassisted units. So we're hoping by allowing that waiver and giving you the authority to use our funds to pay above the FMRs for individual units, looking at reasonable rents, that will help you in finding places for people to live. So you still must ensure that the rent paid are leased with COC program leasing dollars, and they still have to meet the reasonableness standard, which many of you have been doing already. The disability documentation for permanent supportive housing, as you all know, used to require that you get documentation of the disability. What we're saying now is it's really going to be based upon what you see or what you know. You may not see it, but if you can verify for us, you feel the person is disabled, we can take that at this point in time. We're not going to require third-party documentation of that right now. What we're saying is the requirement that intake staff recorded observation of disability be confirmed and accompanied by other evidence. That should happen no later than 45 days from the application for assistance documentation. We're waiving that for any program participant admitted into PSH funded by the COC program for 6 months. So 6 months from the 31st, we're waiving 24 CFR 578-103, and will allow recipients to house people by relying on staff intake recorded observation of the disability. So we're giving you a little bit of relief there. Hopefully that will help get those folks housed as well. The eligible housing search and counseling services, we are waiving that so that you can also use those funds for up to 6 months of a program participant's utility arrears and 6 months of their rent arrears. Used to only be able to use it for credit counseling, accessing a free personal credit report, resolving personal credit issues. Now we're going to allow you to use it to pay either utilities or rents that are in arrears, and that waiver is in effect for a full year. So it's important to note that each of the waivers have different time periods associated with them. So just make sure you pay attention to that when you're implementing an activity in association with the waiver. Number 4, permanent housing, rapid rehousing, monthly case management. The interim rule, as you know, required our participants to meet with a case manager at least once a month. Now we're saying, in the current circumstance that we're in, we're waiving the monthly case management requirements so that case managers meet, I'm sorry, let me just read this through. The requirements in 24 CFR that projects require program participants to meet with case managers not less than 1 per month is waived for all permanent housing, rapid rehousing projects for 2 months, beginning on the date of the memorandum. So 2 months from March 31st forward, that's been waived. HQS, physical inspection of the units. We know that you can't get out there and physically inspect the units. So what we're saying is see if there's some kind of live stream, some kind of video inspection that you can do, some kind of technology like video streaming to ensure the unit meets HQS before any assistance is provided, and make sure you have a written policy to physically reinspect the unit within 3 months after health officials determine special measures to prevent the spread of the coronavirus are no longer necessary. So if there's any kind of technological inspection you can get of a unit, it shows that it meets HQS, you can do that today. Then once your local public health says, and our governor says, okay, COVID-19 measures are no longer necessary, within 3 months of that time, then you would go out and physically inspect the unit to confirm what you saw with the technological inspection. The reinspection of the units for HQS, as you know, we normally have to do that once a year. That's waived for a year, beginning on the date of this memorandum. Another thing that's waived is the 1-year lease requirement. The lease requirement is waived for 6 months. And what it's saying is you no longer have to have a minimum of a 1-year lease. Consolidated plan requirements don't really pertain to you. ESG, Bo will be happy about this. ESG funds, we are the condition that the recipient must be the HMIS lead to pay for costs is being waived to allow for the recipient to use ESG funds to pay for costs of upgrading or enhancing its local HMIS system to incorporate data on ESG relative to COVID-19. That's also a 6-month waiver. The reevaluation for homelessness prevention assistance, that requirement, they're waiving the reevaluation requirement on that to help program participants remain stable in housing during the coronavirus. Waived for 2 years, beginning on the date of the memorandum, so long as the recipient or subrecipient conducts the required reevaluations at least once every 6 months. Housing stability case management, again, obviously you can't do that monthly, so we're waiving that for 2 months, beginning on the date of the memorandum. The restriction on rental assistance to units with rents at or below FMRs. We want to quickly move people into permanent housing. We know how critical that is. So we're waiving the limit on rental assistance to rents that are equal to or less than the FMR established by HUD. You'll see this, really consistently with COC, ESG, and HOPWA. And the FMR restriction is waived under the ESG program as well. Similar waivers for the HOPWA program. And again, if you look at the last page of the notice, page 13, it pretty much lays out for you each of the waiver flexibilities that you can use. So all you need to do is send in name, title, contact information, the declared disaster areas where the waivers will be used, the date you first expect to take advantage of it, and then list for us the flexibilities that you're going to use. So for the moment, DOH and Demas, I'd say just do it by grantee. For everybody else, if you can do it by grant number, great. If not, do it by grantee, and once I get additional advice and guidance from headquarters, I'll let you know on that. So any questions on that before I go to a very brief summary of CARES Act that we had yesterday? I'm sorry if I was a little discombobulated in the beginning. I was telling Liz, my husband and I went out and did our senior citizen shopping this morning, and I have this face mask on. It didn't go so well for me. I had to leave the grocery store, leave my husband in there shopping. So I'm just trying to recover from that. But any questions? Okay, we had a very brief summary of the CARES Act funding, which is a little bit different from the Mega-Waiver. So, we really have these two things going on simultaneously, right? Mega-Waiver was issued 3/31. CARES Act funding, we're obviously trying to get that money out the door as quickly as possible. So CARES Act, if you look at Emergency Solutions Program funding, $4 billion was set aside SNAP is going to issue a notice to define the program requirements. Keep in mind that any of the CARES Act funding, CDBG money relative to the CARES Act funding, HAPA money relative to CARES Act, ESG money, chief elected officials are going to get separate letters for each program. So if you are, Bridgeport, the state of Connecticut, New Haven, Hartford, your chief elected official is going to get 3 letters. If you're the city of Waterbury, you're going to get 2 letters. And the reason for that is, they're going through how grantees are going to apply for this money. Under CDBG, it's going to be some type of a program, of a substantial amendment to either an existing action plan or to an upcoming consolidated plan that they'd be submitting this year. We asked the question for ESG and HOPWA, what will the grantees be required to submit? Jameen did not have an answer for us yet, so she's looking into that. I mean, I'm assuming at the very least an SF 424 and certifications, but I don't know yet. We should have more information on that next week. The plan is to get, on the ESG side, $1 billion out in the first round. They're using the 2020 formula to distribute that. They also have an additional almost $3 billion that they're trying to come up with a formula whereby they could target the hardest hit COVID-19 areas with ESG funds. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but that is what they're working on. This first bucket of money that's coming out, it's in accordance with the same formula that was used to distribute the FY 2020 Emergency Solutions Grant funding. They are working on a notice. She didn't know when the guidance would come out, but we'll obviously, be in close consultation with them. So as soon as we hear anything, we will let you know. So for Connecticut, for ESG, you're looking at the state of Connecticut, the city of Waterbury, cities of Bridgeport, New Haven, and Hartford will all get ESG money. Anything else? Under the CARES Act, there'll be no emergency shelters, street outreach cap. They are going to increase the admin from 7.5% to 10%. There is going to be an increase of the income limit from 30 to 50% of AMI for the homelessness prevention component, and it's going to eliminate the match requirement. How all this is going to work yet, I don't know, but I know they're working hard to get everything together and out the door as quickly as possible. They're also going to allow deviation from applicable procurement standards. They're not going to require anyone who's experiencing homelessness to receive treatment or perform any other prerequisite activity as a condition for receiving shelter, housing, or other services. There won't be any citizen participation or consultation requirements, no minimum period of use for emergency shelters. So for HAPWA, it's $65 million nationally. At least $50 million of that is going to be dispersed again based on the 2020 formula. $10 million is going to competitive renewals. We don't have any competitive renewals in Connecticut, but that's going to happen a little bit differently. And then just so you all know, because I know, particularly during this time, I hope many of you are working with your grantees that receive our CDBG funds to see what funding and flexibilities they may have for you. Under CDBG COVID, everyone in Connecticut is going to be receiving, again, additional buckets of CDBG funds specifically for COVID-19 activities. The one thing to keep in mind that our formula grantees, just so you know, what they're going to have to keep in mind here is we have to make sure that when we put CDBG funds, particularly we're talking about like on the public service side or an economic development side, that public service would be more germane here. If we're putting CDBG funds into an activity, pay for something that another source can pay for. So, for example, Jesse brought up under 570-207, it allows for an entity to pay rent and mortgage to someone, for someone who's undergoing financial difficulty and stress. So that activity is eligible. It meets the national objective, but we have to make sure there's no duplication of benefits. And in Connecticut, we also have a national disaster declaration, so the FEMA dollars would have to go in first. What the Office of Black Grant Assistance is doing for us is they're compiling a list of what all those other sources would be, whereby duplication of benefits would come into play. So just keep in mind that's something that's, you know, got to be developed, but it was part of the act. So they're trying to figure out the easiest way to implement that. Now, just generally speaking, on the CDBG side, given the Mega-Waiver, an entitlement grantee's reasonable notice period has been reduced from 30 days to 5 days, and they can do their public hearings virtually. And now they only have to get responses to any comments that the public might give in a quote-unquote timely manner. So I think what we're going to recommend to the majority of Connecticut's entitlement grantees, 22 of the 23 of them are developing comp plans this year. Comp plans have certain consultation requirements associated with them that action plans do not. So we are more than likely going to recommend everybody prepare a substantial amendment to their FY19 plan, and these waivers apply to the 19 money, the 20 money, and the COVID money. It may be the fastest way for them to get those dollars out the door. Those letters are also being prepared and going off to chief elected officials, I think starting on Monday, if not today. So we're hoping to get a lot of this moving next week. But I hope that you all keep in contact with your entitlement grantees, because they are getting money as a result of the CARES Act. It is for COVID-19. The public service cap is being waived. They can use it for these activities. The only caveat is we have to figure out how we do it so that we're not running afoul of duplication of benefits. But we'll figure that out as the week goes on. And I know Jesse Hanforth, Coleman, her staff, as I said, they're working on a list for us. So I think for COC grantees, it's going to be more germane in the public service arena. You know, for entitlement grantees, we have some other areas like the Small Business Administration, for the first time ever, is issuing deferrable forgivable loans. So whereas job retention is an eligible CDBG activity, as long as you're retaining jobs for low, moderate income people, it's probably not something we're going to use CDBG COVID-19 money for, given the SBA has forgivable loans. So we've got to kind of figure that out. I think they were a little surprised, quite honestly, at headquarters that was put into the bill. So they're still trying to figure it out as well.
Alana, that's great.
Long wind.
Yes, no, that's perfect, and that actually covers our slides 7 through 21. So you did a great job. Yeah, and again, for folks who are just on a phone call, all of these slides will be available. The chat questions are being recorded. This webinar is being recorded. So we know that we're throwing a lot of information at you in very quickly, and we're not expecting you to digest it in this hour, but you will be able to reference it. And in the chat box, there are links to the actual documentation from the federal government. So, so thank you. So Lauren, I'm going to suggest we just sort of scroll through 7 through 21, just so people can see them, but not to really go over them, because I think Alana did a really good job.
Yeah, I'll just highlight a couple of things just to add a little bit more detail to some of what the great update that Alana just did, and also most importantly to make sure people know about the tools that we're making available to make this all hopefully easier for you to exercise this waiver flexibility. So the first that I wanted to point out here on the slide, so this is the address to which your waiver notifications have to be submitted to HUD, and just to reiterate that if you are a sub-recipient on a grant, you do not need to notify HUD of anything. The notifications will happen by the recipient. So most of our projects, either DEMIS or DOH is the recipient, and DEMIS or DOH is taking care of that. So you as the subrecipient do not need to do anything to notify. We do have some projects in CT Bluff where there is a nonprofit or a housing authority that is the recipient of the grant funds. And so if that is the case for your project, you as the recipient will need to notify HUD. Alana talked about that the final page of the notice is specifies the requirements around those notifications. And we have turned that into a template that you can use to make it really easy for you guys to go ahead and make that submission to Alana and her teams. And that template is available at the link on this slide. The other thing, just really quickly, so Alana talked about initial HQS inspections and the fact that you can now do initial HQS inspections using video streaming technology like FaceTime or Skype or Zoom, Google Duo. We are asking that you complete the usual HQS inspection form when you do that, and just note on the form that it was a visual inspection. And we are suggesting that when you do that, you make sure that whomever you are Zooming or FaceTiming with shows you the building number and the unit number, so that you can be sure that the landlord is in fact showing you the right unit that you are doing the inspection on. Alana mentioned that there is a requirement in the waiver notice that you've got, if you are going to exercise this Zoom or video streaming option for the initial inspection, you do need to have a policy. We've developed a sample policy, and it is available at that link. So all you have to do is just have your agency adopt that sample policy. As Alana said, everybody gets that policies and procedures are not the priority right now. So please don't delay using this flexibility. Please go ahead and just get your people out there within 2 days. Remember, you have to wait 2 days from the date of the submission of the notification to HUD. But after those 2 days, just start doing this, right? Don't wait for your board to adopt the policy. That can come later. DEMIS and DOH are going to be adopting this sample policy. So if you are a sub-recipient of DEMIS or DOH, you do not need to worry about adopting that policy, because they're going to adopt it and that will cover you. Alana, of course, you will speak up if I say anything that's incorrect. Just really quick on annual reinspection. So you do not need to continue to do annual re-inspections. HUD has put that waiver in place for the next year, but we would like to encourage you, whenever possible. It is still important that people live in decent housing, and we want to make sure that people are living in decent housing. So 2 things. Number one, this waiver does not mean that the landlords are relieved of the requirement to maintain the housing. The HQS standards still apply, and you can still stop payment on a unit if you have to, because it doesn't have water, for example. You're just no longer required to go out and physically inspect, but we do really encourage people to take steps to make sure that the units are being maintained, whether that means that it is feasible for you to continue to do maybe virtual re-inspections, or at least checking in with clients regularly to make sure that there aren't significant maintenance issues, HQS issues in the units. Okay, the disability documentation waiver that Alana talked about, we are, as she said, you should continue to get third-party disability verification if you can. right? Because eventually you're going to need that. And so the more you can do now, the less of a hole you're going to have to dig out from later. But in the meantime, when we know that it might be impossible to get that right now, you can, as Lana said, have your staff people just write down that they have observed the disability and that they suspect the disability. And then we're also going to be doing a self-certification that you can use for your clients. So that will be coming. That's not available yet, but we will make that available to you guys next week, and we'll let you know when it is available. Alana covered this, so I'm not going to talk about it. So I'm trying to see if there's anything here. So this is the item that Alana talked about, where projects that were formerly required to have an initial 1-year lease are no longer required to do that. DOH is also waiving that requirement, which was a local requirement, not a federal requirement, for their ESG rapid rehousing projects. And again, we do encourage you, whenever possible, to get that 1-year lease if you can, right? So if you can get the 1-year lease, do get the 1-year lease. And then just a reminder that this doesn't mean that you don't need a lease, right? So written executed leases remain a requirement. It's just that the initial period of the lease does not have to be for 12 months any longer. So for example, you could do a 2-month initial lease that then goes month to month at the end of the 2 months. So the requirement is that the period be greater than 1 month on the initial lease. The FMR waivers, just to reiterate, it is still necessary that people do rent reasonableness documentation. So you still want to document that the unit is leasing at or below 3 comparable units, and then put that into your rent reasonableness determination documentation. And again, use this as necessary, but use it judiciously, right? Because the more money we spend above FMR on leasing units, the fewer people we can help. And particularly for rapid rehousing projects, the less affordable the unit is going to be to them when they're no longer able to get the assistance and have to pay the rent on their own. So we, of course, encourage everyone to continue to lease units at the least amount possible. On the utility arrears waiver that Alana spoke about, just a couple quick things I wanted to highlight here.
I'm going to give you a 2-minute warning, Lauren. 2-minute warning.
Okay. Okay. This doesn't cover all of the, this doesn't cover all utility and rental arrear situations, right? It's only for when the arrears are a barrier to somebody obtaining housing, right? So if people are already housed, you're not going to use it to pay off arrears that they owe in their current people get housing. So let's say they have an arrears to the PHA, or they can't get utilities turned on because they have arrears. That's when you're going to use it. And just to remember that there is a federal moratorium on evictions. So people in housing, despite arrears, are not going to be able to be evicted. And there's also a CT moratorium on most utility shutoffs. And more detail is at the links on these slides. Just look quickly. I think we can skip this. And then we did want to say really quickly, another thing just to be mindful of in the CARES Act is that we do want to make sure we are connecting people to all of the incomes to which they are entitled. And so there are links here about those individual checks that people are going to be able to get, the $1,200 for the singles, $1,500 for couples, right? And there's more information available at the IRS site. We will get more information out to you guys as it becomes available. That information is changing daily, and so the best source now is this IRS site, and then also the expanded unemployment benefits, right? So you want to make sure that you are checking out the information that the CT Department of Labor is putting out to make sure that all your folks that might be eligible can take advantage of those unemployment benefits. And then lastly, we've gotten some questions about income documentation. So it's hard right now for you guys to get the usual income documentation that you need when you're doing rent calculations for folks. And so we just wanted to remind you that if you are not able to get the usual source documentation, right, because the Social Security office is closed and they're not responding to your, web-based or telephone inquiries, then you can use third-party participant verification. You just need to dive to get the third-party verification and get that third-party verification as soon as you can.
Great.
All right.
So Lauren, I know that that's a lot and it's in the slides, and we're trying to keep these to an hour. So without further ado, we're going to have Liz and Molly from Beacon Health Options just spend the next 13 minutes with us talking about on-the-ground strategies related to mental health services for homeless providers. Liz, Molly, take it away.
Hey, thank you. So, good morning. I'm Liz Downing. I am a clinical supervisor at Beacon Health Options, and Molly and I were asked to come and talk to you all about working with people with mental health during this difficult period. So I'm going to lead off, and Molly is going to jump in as need be, right, Molly?
Yeah, take it away, Liz.
Okay. So next. Okay, so just quickly to go through what we're going to go over, understanding the situation, building a safety net, staying busy and productive, how to stop spiraling, so just some strategies, how to work with our clients. And then we put together some resources for you on warm lines, support groups. We want to touch on telehealth and insurance, as well as just reviewing some of the existing resources and the importance of practicing self-care. Okay, next. So one question that's been raised by some people is, how can we help our clients understand that during this period when there's something bigger going on that's impacting us all, however, that their individual feelings matter and they are not alone. So we want to help them acknowledge the reality and that this is a time where a lot of things are changing and we don't know what to expect day to day. So we really need to help them take some time and space to process their feelings about this, and then to work on how to help them cope. So we can help them identify their natural support networks. Some people may have family and friends that they can reach out to. And we're going to touch later on some of the cellular plans that are offering extra minutes, etc., so that people can have more access to phone conversations if they need them, as well as there's an abundance of support resources available right now as well. So we'll touch on that as we move on. Helping people identify reliable resources. So we're getting inundated with a lot of information from different media resources, and not all of them are true. So when people are getting a lot of information, we want to help direct them toward reliable resources, like, for example, the CDC website, to make sure that they are informed with the best information they can get. And maybe limiting their exposure to news so that all this news can be very overwhelming for some of our clients. So suggesting they maybe spend an hour a day on that. And we can go to the next slide. Okay, so how can we help our members build a safety net, since we are in social distancing and they cannot see providers necessarily, and may be separated from family and friends? So again, we can help them with information about getting more minutes for their phones. We can direct them to online support groups, warm lines, and crisis text lines, which I will give you some more details on future slides. And there are lots of virtual recovery support and meetings that are available too, and we did get some of those together for you. It's important that we recognize that loneliness and connection can look different for different people. So we realize that's very individualized, and we have included a link, and I understand everyone's going to be getting this presentation, so they'll be able to review some of the links that we send afterward. That the link is an article on loneliness during older age versus midlife and how that might look different, just as some info for you. So
And just because we have a limit on the time that we can spend, we're going to move a little bit more quickly through some of the next pages, but our friends at Housing Innovations are going to share out this information as a PowerPoint, so you guys will get the virtual links if there's stuff you want to share with staff.
Okay, next. Okay, what are some ideas to help clients stay busy and productive? So it's important that we work with our clients on some goals, things they'd like to do. Now, things have been interrupted. What can we do to change our routine and add some things that are manageable, not goals that are too high, but just small goals to bring more into their lives, since they can't do some of the things they've used to been doing. So maintaining a routine, waking up at a certain time, preparing their meals, having as much of a normal routine as possible, and then working with them on what are their interests, what are their hobbies, what are some things that they can do in the home. Do they enjoy reading? Do they, just helping them identify some things that they can do to keep themselves busy and productive during the day. So next. Okay, and what can we do to help clients not to spiral and get stuck in worst case scenarios? So sometimes people may tend to think of worst case scenarios, and just helping them realize it's okay to think that way, but then we need to move on to recognizing these worst case scenarios are not necessarily likely to happen, and to shift ourselves into the present moment and to think about positive things as well. So helping people stay present on what are the positives in their life can be very helpful, as well as grounding activities. So just a suggestion on a grounding activity, naming 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste, to bring people out of their head and more into the present moment and connect them to where they are physically. That can be very helpful for people who have a lot of anxiety and to calm them down. So another thing that people find helpful is physical exercise, so that again they can get out of their head a little bit and shift their focus more to physical movement. So if they can't get outside, there are lots of videos online available. If people have internet access, they can take advantage of those as well. And to help them think about activities that they do have control over, helping them think through, how can I, get my groceries and maintain my social distancing? What can I do to connect with other people despite the situation we're in? So helping them with those kinds of things. And then we included another link here for an article that lots of people found helpful. This article discusses that the discomfort that many of us are feeling is related to a grief process. And I think a lot of people find that helpful. So please review that and share that as need be. I think it's important to note as well that people who are already in a grief process due to some losses that they may have had, this may really be compounding that for them. So this may be helpful for some people in that situation.
And Liz, just a time check. We only have a couple minutes, so if we can scoot a little quickly through the next couple, we got to make sure we wrap on time for everybody.
Okay, next. Okay, we've included some warm lines. You may be familiar with warm lines as opposed to crisis lines or for social support. As well, at the bottom, there is a crisis text line for those who may be in crisis and prefer to text. Next. And then here we've put together some online support resources, some by Zoom, Facebook Live, or phone. So take a look at those. Next. And then we've just compiled information on phone and cellular providers who are offering more minutes. I just heard today that SafeLink is now offering unlimited minutes instead of the extra minutes that they were previously offering. So help your members and your clients take advantage of that. Next.
And I'd also say on the SafeLink line, just try and keep yourselves abreast of what's going on with SafeLink. I know that there's a lot of energy being put into trying to make sure more people have access to video capacity during all this. So I'm sure more is going to come out.
And we included some recovery resources for 12-step meetings, as well as the Beacon medication-assisted treatment map. So for Medicaid members who would like to find a provider who offers Suboxone, buprenorphine, Vivitrol, methadone, etc., there is a map that can help them identify local providers in their area. So feel free to share that.
And it's also worth knowing that the majority of methadone providers are continuing to accept new intakes and are really continuing to get people access. So I know there's going to be more focus on this next week, but just know, call around, a lot of these programs are still operating.
Okay, so Medicaid is covering telehealth now. That includes telephone as well as video conferencing. Just have members reach out to their providers and find out what they are offering and how that works so they can set that up. Or if they have private insurance, again, many providers are offering this as well. And we can move on. So for those who are uninsured, you may have heard that there is open access with Access Health CT. So that was extended to the 17th. So April 17th, there is still open access. So if you do have people that are uninsured, help them with that resource so that they can look into getting insurance. If they have private insurance provider, they can also access their insurance company through their member line for those companies. Okay. And then just a few links for ongoing resources for behavioral health. So they're the enhanced care clinics. These are still accepting new patients. The FQHCs, which can be for uninsured or people who are insured. The DMIS, local health, mental health authorities, who are working primarily with members with SPMI. So these are just some links for you if people are looking for to connect clients to help.
Yeah, and so even though a lot is changing in the landscape of behavioral health, a lot of places are switching to be virtual intakes and things like that. If you have members who maybe have not engaged with formal mental health treatment in the past, it's worth knowing that the enhanced care clinics across the state are largely still taking people in. They're still doing so in a pretty quick turnaround. Federally qualified health centers are often pretty well partnered with you guys in the CANs, and they are continuing to take folks on for behavioral health. So if you have people who right now are thinking, okay, I'm ready to get connected, maybe haven't done therapy or counseling historically, these are places that are most likely to be able to intake folks pretty rapidly.
Okay. So this is just a reminder that we all need to practice self-care and help our staff to do that as well, so that we as professionals can be more ready to help others. So we gave you a nice little cartoon of place the oxygen mask on yourself first before helping small children or others who may need your assistance. So just as a reminder, we all have to have good self-care during this time. Okay, so Beacon Health Options resources. So my team are the intensive care managers. We are a team of licensed clinicians who work with Medicaid members and providers to help people progress who are having either barriers or who have complex issues. There's additionally peer support services at Beacon. So peers are people who have lived experience in the behavioral health system, and they also help support the Medicaid members by helping them navigate the system, helping them inspire hope that recovery is possible, and helping them with basic needs and accessing community support. So either one of those two services, as well as any provider referrals that people need, you can reach out to this 1-877 number, and referrals can be made. Our members can call themselves, or providers can call and make those referrals. Either way is fine. We also have our regional network managers, such as Molly. And on the next page, we have a map that will show you who your regional network manager is and their contact information.
Now might be a busy time for you guys to start learning how to navigate behavioral health services. So if you are having trouble getting folks connected, don't spin your wheels trying to troubleshoot. You can reach out to us and we'll see what we can help you figure out.
Okay. And I think we just gave you a couple more resources. A page which gives a lot of resources from the ct.gov site, as well as another article that gives some tips on strategies like box breathing. So you can view those later on.
Liz and Molly, thanks so much. You remind us on your last slide that we need to continue to breathe in and breathe out. I was remiss to stop us in the middle and have us do our exercise, and we're just about out of time. So if we can move to slide number 30, Lauren. There is lots of good information that Liz and Molly have compiled for us. We're so grateful for that and wish we could spend more time with you. We will be back with each other next Thursday. For some folks, Friday is a holiday. And so we are trying very hard to keep these important meetings to an hour. We know that everyone's really busy. It doesn't mean that you can't continue to ask us questions during the time, either in the chat box or on our email address, and we'll continue to give you as much information as we can. So without further ado, next Thursday, April 9th, 11 o'clock. And as you're about to sign off, everybody breathe in. I can see you all, so I want to see you breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out.
You know how many times a day I do that?
Good, I'm glad you do. Be good to yourself, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and have a good weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.
I'm just going to show me things.